Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another week of the third round. I'm your host, Pat Clark, and today's edition, high atop Polish Hill, will focus on a variety of items, including, I want to start out, if I may, thanking those folks who did show up at Carp all night last evening. Doug Shields, City Council President, candidate for Controller. Pleasure to see you down there at the river. Councilman Bill Peduto, a great American, also down there, and a whole slew of people, miscellaneous and sundry, most of whom I had no idea who they were, so God bless you for showing. And certainly none of them watching this show, but to their benefit. But I want to next introduce our guests this afternoon, the talented Ms. Katherine Fink, WDUQ News, Khari Mosley, Ward Chair of the 22nd Ward, Democratic Party, and head of the League of Young Voters and the League of Young Voters Education Fund. Welcome. Weather sucks out there today, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's depressing.
Why would you even want to be outdoors? But we're here, duking it out in spite of the lovely weather for the benefit of Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh politics. And we're going to first cover the obvious, most important issue that came up in politics this week here in Pittsburgh. A lot of news coverage over this. America's most livable city once again. How about that? Here's to Pittsburgh.
All right.
Howdy doody. How'd we do it?
You didn't drink.
Oh,
I don't really think you believe it.
I'm sorry, I do. Yeah, here's to it. Now, why is Pittsburgh America's most livable city?
You know, it was funny when that came out because the publisher of that ranking admitted that we didn't actually do that well in any category in particular.
But
I think our highest ranking was for recreation. We were number 21. But because math is complicated and crazy things happen, we still ended up being number one because we're sort of consistently average. And that makes us great.
Well, that's NASCAR was like that until they changed the point system. You just plugged along every race and did fine. You didn't have to win. You were the NASCAR Winston Cup champion. Same deal here. I think consistency is important.
I'm sorry, you said NASCAR, and I think I fell asleep.
I'm sorry. I apologize to our viewers, too. But so why is America's most livable city Pittsburgh to you? I mean, other than the algorithm.
I think it's all in the algorithm. I have no idea.
I think that's actually the new slogan for the city that they're considering. It's all in the algorithm.
Well, I think Pittsburgh is America's most livable city. It's certainly why I was, moving here umpteen years ago, and I wouldn't change that. But dynamite on my ass to get me out.
That was why. Just that in itself, you said.
Well,
most livable. Did you read about it in 1985? Last time we were ranked the most livable.
No,
and you said.
I was in our nation's capital. Word got out. That was the first time I'd probably said Pittsburgh. But that was before I'd come here. When it changed to a questioning tone to an Pittsburgh exclamation point. And no, it was the Sophie Maslow article in, I think it was National Geographic that actually really did it to me. They did a story about Pittsburgh and started out with Sophie, the story about Sophie in the apartment, catching the guys coming in and trying to rip her off. And she basically kicked their ass out of the apartment and recovered all the lost property. I'm like, wow, I want to live where she's mayor.
Was that really it? I mean, did you not come here for
affordability. I mean, we couldn't buy. I mean, if we could have figured out how to do the financing on buying a house in 1993 in Washington, D.C. We'd be retired by now. We could have retired and moved to Pittsburgh. We didn't. We moved here because we could buy a house here, big gigantic house for about $1.50 and shit. That still can. Many neighborhoods.
Yeah. So that was really the big, because for me, I mean, people say this, it all comes down to jobs, right? I got offered a job, and so I came. I'm sorry if that offended you.
Well, no, but that's no. It's all about the beer. No, actually, see, our experience, my wife and mine, was exactly contrary. We moved here because the place was great, and figured we'd get jobs. A little stick to it, a little good old fashioned, wheel to the elbow thing, and we got jobs. I think it's possible. We're whatever.
All right.
So it's not the chicken and the egg thing. It's not necessarily jobs. not necessarily talent. It's the whole picture that makes Pittsburgh such a livable city.
So what do you think the ranking of most livable city is going to do for Pittsburgh?
I don't know. I think we kind of shot our wad with the whole, like, we've got the youngest mayor in America thing. They've heard from Pittsburgh lately. It's no surprise. Yeah. I mean, I think cumulatively it's good.
Yeah. I mean, Khari, you laugh. I mean, do you think it's going to do anything for us?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't.
Well, I think you got to have a plan for this sort of thing. The reason the thing with Luke worked was because, and this is going to be a good segue, because he had staff with a plan that wanted to make sure that when Luke got in there, like, the word went bam nationwide. So my question is there a plan for if Pittsburgh should become the most livable city in America again? What would we do? My guess is probably not. We probably did that whole image gap thing a few years ago, and it's sitting up on a shelf there. And now when Cleveland puts out a single symbol, as opposed to like the 27-word, image statement, it's Cleveland Plus. Like,
is that what it is? I didn't hear.
Yeah, it's like iconographically based and smart and not some phrase thing. My guess is we don't have a plan that's actually effective.
Yeah, like the image stuff is cool, but I think you have to get to a certain point where there's a reality, that is different. I think that DC has an image, and some people are interested in DC because of the image, but more people are interested in DC when they go there and they see, a city that's more diverse and that's more progressive and it's more exciting to be in than Lancaster or Dayton, Ohio. And I think Pittsburgh actually needs to take those real steps to, get into get into a place where there are, compared to the likes of Boston and Atlanta and DC. But, we could sell it as that or try to paint the image of that, but at the end of the day, when people are here, if they don't feel that, it's only going to go so far.
Well, especially when, like, a big piece of Pittsburgh, imaging is based on its level of authenticity. I mean, like, I moved here because this was a real city. It wasn't. It's one of the downsides of living in D.C. is everything so transitory that unless you've actually grown up in the African American community there, or can be Pat Buchanan and grow up at Chevy Chase and claim that you're from D.C., you really don't the place is not of a place to you, as opposed to Pittsburgh, which is like a real town, real hometown, real city and stuff. So you can't fake it. If your thing is authenticity, then you can't put that in a box and sell it like so.
I think part of the problem too is, with the image gap, there was this committee and whatever, and everybody knew that that's what they were trying to do. Nowadays, since that stuff has kind of been dissolved, whose job is it now to be the pro-Pittsburgh people? I mean, is it the mayor's office? Is it the Visit Pittsburgh organization?
And the Steelers do not have cheerleaders.
That's true, although they're getting a mascot. So that's
true. What did you think about the mascot? Wow, he's I don't know.
Did you see the mascot?
Yeah, he kind of looks like, I don't know.
I was at that news conference.
I was hoping Joe Magarac or something, but.
I was at that news conference where he ran in and...
Square-jawed and unshaven.
Square-jawed, unshaven, with the overalls. Yeah. Waving a terrible towel, and they actually had a fake steel beam that he had on his shoulder.
Yeah. It would have been great if it had been a real steel beam. Done some damage with it.
Yeah, that would have been a little better, I think, for our reputation as well. We gotta have a foam steel beam, but yeah. I don't know that we can count on him to be the ambassador, because I don't think he actually speaks,
That's true. No, he'll be on the sideline doing the, beam swing thing. Well, we'll see, the big anniversary year for the Steelers this year, so.
But, I think in terms of promoting Pittsburgh better, there's been kind of a lack of coordination. I mean, even when it was kind of established that, okay, we want to promote Pittsburgh, okay, now what do we do? It's you had to figure out, all these different organizations that may have a piece of that, how do we get them all together and on the same page? Right. I don't think we were on the same page then, and now that there's nothing organized, we're definitely not on the same page.
But for the record, I did utilize the regional color palette and font.
Sweet.
In a project.
Recently?
Went out of my way. Well, when that was the whole big deal.
You went out of your way.
I went out of my way to utilize the regional color palette and font.
And
for a project. It's a CD we did.
Did it work well for you?
Oh, yeah, it was popping. Bam! People looked at it and said Pittsburgh. Of course, it said Best of Pittsburgh, but, was the font. The color
it was reinforced.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Any other news? Speaking of the substance,
Man, we already covered the Steelers mascot and the livable city. I'm
We
not
hit-
sure what
we
else
hit the
there is
big
going
issues.
on. Yeah.
Oh well, yesterday I went to the Darfur March.
oh yeah,
Pretty interesting.
that was they got some good coverage in the paper today above the fold photo and all that.
Yeah, they had Bill Peduto and Mike Doyle and Doug Shields were there, and the NAACP was there, and there was actually some members of the African American clergy were there, and actually I ran into Deborah Todd from the Pittsburgh Courier, and she mentioned that this had been like the largest representation from the African American community at any of the Darfur events up to that point.
Oh, that's great.
Which I
That
thought was
rocks.
like an interesting,
That's great.
interesting perspective.
And we had a pretty broad footprint too. The paper today had photos of students up from Ohio University, which isn't that far away, but it's a stretch.
Yeah.
So that's pretty big coverage.
Yeah, there was people from Philadelphia, people from New York, people from DC that came as well.
That's sweet. Who organized that? Where'd that come out of?
I think it's the Pittsburgh Emergency Coalition for Darfur.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They got a big sign up in Highland Park, as I
Yep.
recall. Yep. Well, good news on that. Anything else? All right, what about the shit cans? A few more people got shit canned this week, mayor's office. Or,
Technically not canned.
You're
moved.
right. They got the pigeonhole moved, something like that,
Reassigned.
right? That
Right.
that word, reassigned,
Yeah.
and gladly, too. I'm sure.
Well, there were 3 of them, and actually, I haven't heard about the final one. Whether Marlene Cassidy, whether she actually has officially accepted a new position.
She had a day off to decide. She should have decided by now, I think.
Yeah,
He gave her
and
the day off.
I mean, yeah, I had read that that the other woman whose name escapes me, Anna Dobkin, did accept the position in planning. And then Dick Scringer, former press secretary, is going to be working on senior initiatives. So I mean, I think it's interesting, and I mean, I know that from the very beginning when I heard about, when we first kind of knew that Luke was going to be taking over, that some people in the know said, the first thing he needs to do is establish that he's his own man, and bring in his own people, and
that's a basic rule of thumb in the corporate world. Like, you show up in a new job, you'd like just walk down the aisle. If you can't figure out who it is, you just walk down the aisle and fire somebody. Like, that pretty much says it all.
Yeah. So I think it was actually surprising that it took this long actually to do a little house cleaning. But I mean,
It didn't take this long. I mean, how many people are left from the original
not
team?
that many. But I think just some people expected it to happen a little sooner. I mean, he has been around now for a few months, but so it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see who they're going to choose as the new press secretary.
Is it going to be easy to reach the mayor's office, do you think?
We'll see. It hasn't been that easy for me. And I'm not sure what the reasons were exactly, but Dick Scringer as press secretary has, during his tenure as press secretary, it's been difficult to get phone calls returned. At least I'm speaking for myself, but I've heard it from a couple other smaller media outlets, I should say.
That does not benefit a vital and free press, at least in my estimation.
Well, press secretaries have all different ways they approach their jobs. There's certainly many different styles, but there would be difficulties at times trying to do stories, and not even necessarily controversial stories. I actually did a story for NPR on Luke as sort of like the look at our young mayor type of story, and I was surprised that it took a while to arrange that interview.
Oh, interesting.
But
anybody know what's up with new people coming in?
I haven't heard anything about it.
No, I haven't either. But as I said, I'm very curious because I think whoever he chooses as press secretary will, send some sort of message as far as what sort of relationship he wants to have with the press, and certainly having someone as press secretary that you feel like is, that you have, you being the journalist, that you have competing goals sometimes, but if you have somebody who at least is upfront with you about what they will tell you and what they won't tell you, and et cetera, then that makes it easier.
You got an equivalent in recent White House press secretaries, like one you work with? Tony Snow, pretty much your style?
White House press secretaries? I don't know. But I mean, as far as press people who I have been pleased with, just one that jumps out in my mind, he gives a good soundbite. Guillermo Cole with the county health department.
Yeah.
I've never met the guy in person. I've talked to him on the phone dozens of times, and he's the kind of person who, you know, expresses himself very well and doesn't stick to just what's on a press release. You know, if you ask him something that goes into a little more depth, he can actually answer it for you, which is a big plus.
Competence in government and in spokesmodeling is important.
It is. So, you know, there's an example of somebody that, at least for radio purposes, great. He knows how to speak for 20 seconds or less at a time.
So we've got some political races still in preparation for the May 15th primary, and I actually would be remiss if I didn't pause at this point, because I said I would, to talk about the Black Political Empowerment Project and the People for the American Way Foundation having Democracy Day on Tuesday, the Tuesday prior to the election, May 8th, and then this Tuesday, May 1st, the Warhol Museum is doing a candidates forum too. So if you want to find out a little bit more about what's happening, want to actually get out in a place and meet candidates, those are two upcoming opportunities, Tuesday, May 1st at the Warhol Museum, and May 8th we'll get some more details next week. Maybe we'll get Celeste on the Union Project, yeah. So more details on those, but let's slide into a little bit on the council races that are competitive. Anything you're feeling on? How are you feeling on now?
On the city council? Yeah. Something that's kind of interesting that happened in my district, District 3, which is where Jeff Cook is the incumbent councilman. He sent out a mailing recently to some of his constituents in which there was an interview, not something that I think was published in any newspaper, but something that I think he just set up to be interviewed, just a little Q&A. Some people on the South Side were a little upset, and someone actually wrote a letter to the editor of the South Pittsburgh Reporter, the local free weekly, who said, you know, that South Side residents should feel insulted by it because he mentioned that many of the same people serve on South Side boards. Like there are various South Side organizations. You know, there's South Side Local Development Company, South Side Planning Council. You know, and he mentioned that there are some people who serve on multiple boards, and I'm not quoting this directly, but you have to wonder what their motives are. Is basically what the sentiment of that was. So some people who are active in the South Side community said, "What do you mean by that exactly?"
Well, sounds to me like that probably would be a interview left unpublished, but yeah, that seems like something. Why he's getting his word out there, saying what he thinks.
He has certainly established himself as somebody who says what he thinks, and that's kind of the way he responded to those criticisms.
What any idea how that campaign's been going? Besides or since that?
Hard to say. I don't know this will have any effect necessarily. I mean, but I have seen, just again being out in the South Side, lots of yard signs. So, you know, people in the Cook and Krause camps are definitely, you know, gung ho about it. So I'm curious to see how that one's going to play out, because they were fairly close in the last election.
Any action shaken in your? I mean, you don't have a competitive district where you are, but anywhere else around town where you got it going?
Well, I mean, again, I think District 3 is turning into a very interesting race. You know, it appears that Bruce Krause has really been out knocking on a lot of doors and has put together a team of, you know, a whole field operation. People are outdoor knocking every day. So I think that race is going to be really close. You know, obviously Cook has the advantage with the incumbency as well as the party endorsement, you know, as well as other networks that he has in his district. But I think that's going to be close. I think District 7 is going to be really close. You know, I think Pat Dowd has really been out there going really, really hard. And, you know, I guess Bodak still hasn't agreed to, you know, debate him in any public forums, which I think it may have like a negative effect. I think it may be eventually have like a backlash effect. I mean, Dowd picked up the Post-Gazette's endorsement. I think that's going to be close as well. And, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in District 9 over the next couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, it should be interesting as well. I mean, with the whole Towanda Carlisle situation, because the ethics board does now have a fifth member.
Have they met?
They have not met.
Well, between 5 people, it's very tough to schedule meetings.
Well, you know, last time they tried to meet, the the woman who is the 5th member had not been confirmed yet, and she showed up, and 2 other people showed up. But apparently the other 2 were out of town, which makes you wonder, like, what sort of planning went involved in the first place? Could they not figure out that 2 of them were out of town
There's that
before they actually came
software you
together?
can get for free on the internet too, if it's really tough to schedule. But these are these are demanding times for many of us.
Right. So I did talk to the newest member who said that she was under the impression that the board would be meeting in the next couple weeks. Of course, like that's everybody says couple weeks for everything, right? But I mean, you'd have to think that there's still a sense of urgency to this, So I don't know. Maybe if the media puts on enough pressure again to find out when the board's meeting, maybe they actually will meet.
So competitive races, controllers, anything cooking on that? You got any feel for how that's shaping out?
I think that's going to be a complete surprise. I mean, I don't know, Khari, whether you have any feel, but it just seems like there's so many different candidates. And Post-Gazette
Post-Gazette
endorsed
endorsed
right?
today, right? This week, rather, DeWita, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean,
It's that whole new government position that they're taking, fresh blood into the system. It's a joke. DeWita was an elected official before.
I mean, I think that race is going to come out really interesting, because I think one of the things that's going to be most important is voter turnout.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are predicting a low turnout without a mayor's race. With the county executive being, having the opposition of more of a symbolic campaign, that Rick Schwartz is running. Obviously he's not going to be able to get the resources to get up on TV and really, run the type of campaign that I think it would take to unseat a Dan Honorado. So I think it's more of a symbolic campaign. So I think that the idea is that it's going to be a low turnout, and so it's going to be interesting to see who can turn their people out, because it could be, who knows, like maybe 12 or 15,000 votes might get you elected controller.
Because the endorsement for controller, that was close as well, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that was close, yeah.
And contested.
Michael Lamb won by 1 vote. So, I mean, you would think that he has, I think he has the advantage of being, the endorsed candidate.
He has very large signs from what I've seen.
Yeah. And he's ran citywide
And numerous.
before. Comes from, a political background in the South Hills. His father was a state senator. So I think he has a lot of infrastructure. But again, Mike DeWita is like from generally the same part of town, and Tony Pecora is from south of the river too. So you just don't know how many votes he's going to pick up in the south, or where he's going to have to make up.
So you're presuming Shields going to get love on the East End then?
I think he's going to get a lot of love on the East End. He's really been campaigning hard. He's been a lot of places. Like I said, he was at the Dartford event. And I think he's really positioning himself as a different type of progressive than Michael Lamb, where I think Michael Lamb is kind of like a reform progressive as far as the way he's positioning himself and presenting himself. And I think Doug Shields is running more as like a social progressive.
Well, although some of the things that Doug Shields has said in interviews that I've seen in terms of what he would like to bring and approach he wants to bring the controller's race is very much one of like oversight and really hitting hard on the numbers, which is, he's got an ability to dig, as he's demonstrated, pretty deep into the policy and come up with something that works.
I think for the general public, there's still the issue of, how many people truly understand what the controller does, or
He controls. Everyone knows that. The only question is to what extent.
Yeah, well, that is the question, I think, because some people do see the controller's office as having a lot of potential for reform.
Control, almost a legislative point of view.
But historically, I don't think a lot of people have seen it that way. If it's someone who's not really entrenched in city government, then there may be that issue that may affect it, as well as the potentially low turnout, as you said. I mean, if people are already, you get the super voters, and they've already made up their minds, which guy they like, and
I want my card. Give me my card.
right.
What I want to know is who's paying for my pills. Of course, the young people, they all think the world is owed to them on a platter too. So.
And there are also little subtle things. I mean, I noticed as well the Pecora signs make sure they say keep Tony Pecora, because although he was not elected before, he is the acting controller.
And in that sense, he is not unlike many other current elected officials. Caretaker until the vote comes in.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see whether the power of incumbency, if you will, makes
unelected incumbency too,
right.
which is an interesting concept. But here we are. Welcome to Pittsburgh, most livable city in America. Did we mention? Speaking of livable, so the city's basically going to die, as is Philadelphia, if we don't get any funding for public transportation. But you've got Sam Smith from Puxatawney, Pennsylvania. Worldly Puxatawney. Of course, where I come from, that would be the county seat. It would be a big time with all the groundhog shit going on there.
Have you ever been there for Groundhog Day?
Thank God, no. I've seen the movie, and I think that's
no,
enough.
you've got to go. You've got to go.
All right, well, as long as Sam Smith vacates, then I'll be there. But yeah, Mr. Smith has pointed out that nope, everything's dead. We're not funding anything. Go die. Basically, Ford to New York City, drop dead. This is Sam Smith's message to urban Pennsylvania. We're screwed. How are we not screwed?
Yes. This may haunt me if I run for governor one day, but I mean, you can only expect so much from a guy from Punxsutawney. I mean,
well, it's a Puxatawney perspective, and you gotta account for it.
The Ku Klux Klan is heavy in Punxsutawney.
Yeah, they ain't giving any love to the urban areas. But the fact of the matter is that if transportation is eviscerated, then Grandma, who has been able to get what she needs on a weekly basis through access and other public transportation out in the middle of nowhere, she's going to be hurting too. And that message has never, with rare exceptions, disabilities community has done a great job of lobbying for transportation, but that message never gets out there. Sam Smith has no idea how many families of seniors who rely on that transit, people from the disabilities community who rely on that transit might kick his ass if they lose that transit.
And I mean, this all comes back to the urban versus rural, but I mean, Steve Bland too has tried to emphasize the point. I'm not sure it's really gotten through that the success of urban areas affects rural areas. I mean,
well, and
we
there's
are
several
in
areas
some
that
sense
totally
all this
get
together.
that. I mean, like the folks, Beaver County Transit, they're very, very smart about how they integrate with what we do on an urban basis and what the issues are. And I think Washington County, other surrounding counties, but we haven't been able to pull the trigger.
We're still working out the kinks to some extent.
Well,
I mean, there's
no
still
doubt.
some counties that have buses that come all the way into downtown Pittsburgh with nobody on them, and so I mean they're still working on that. But I think they are trying to move toward that to create a more regional transportation, mass transit entity, and that'll be good when that happens.
Who's taking the leadership in that? Regional transportation, the Pittsburgh region, somebody from the Pittsburgh region going to step up and take a leadership
My
role?
impression is the Port Authority is
But the
trying
Port
to
Authority is
work
not an
directly
elected
with them.
body. I mean,
No,
we
you're right.
need...
Dan Alvarado's been singing that chorus for a while, at least since last summer. Even with he has a transportation commission he put together, maybe a year ago, and there was a number of civic leaders on it. But one of the things that came out of it was to put together a Southwestern Pennsylvania Regional Transit Authority.
Yeah, but you have to wonder too. I mean, it seems like transportation issues in general are not doing so well statewide. I mean, you had the Governor's Commission, and many of their recommendations came out, and a lot of people said, well, that would be nice, but, and so a lot of them got kind of tossed aside. And more recently, just in the past couple of weeks, state lawmakers have said, yeah, the governor and the privatization of the turnpike, ain't going to happen.
So nearly as much impact as the Baker Commission on a national level.
Yeah, so I mean, even the governor, who has, in the past been fairly successful at building bridges and getting people to, come together on issues, it sounds like transportation issues lately, he has been striking out.
Ain't happening.
So there's just not a lot of, the atmosphere right now is not one of cooperation.
Great. Okay, so on that high note,
Sorry.
how about this? America's most livable city, once again. All right, that's better. On that high
number
note.
one ho-ho city, too.
I forgot the ho-ho thing. Although there is some level of controversy in the numbers, evidently, but we have to...
We'll take it, man. Claim it.
I'm going with the
embrace
ho-ho.
it. Okay.
Absolutely. 1.3 per year, something like that. God bless Pittsburgh, and God bless you, our esteemed viewers. So from high atop Polish Hill, on another Sunday afternoon, again, anyone who wants to join us up through the election, we're up here about 3:30, something like that, Sundays in Polish Hill, regardless of how horrible the weather is. Thank you once again for joining us here at the third round. Here's to you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tasek. Woo.